Gigi Robinson, pleasure to meet you. Obviously, we're Birmingham Wheelchair Basketball. We've been doing interviews since the start of the pandemic, all the way through the last 12, 18 months. And now we're on probably about, I say, you're probably about a 75th person to interview. We've interviewed the likes of Sally Gummel, OBE, Baroness Tanny Gray Thompson, Jennifer Keat from the Keat Foundation in Atlanta, Kelly Casey from Mason's Tie Box in Virginia, Dante Manis from Houston, Texas for Houston Rockets and the NBA. And it's been quite a ride. And, it's a pleasure to talk to you, who yourself is an influencer on TikTok and over 135,000 followers. But obviously, it all started as an intern for Warner Brothers, I take it.
Yeah, there's actually a really big backstory to how I fell into social media in the first place. And before I get into that, I just wanted to say thank you for including me here in this interview series. And it's an honor to be speaking to you. It's actually my first international feature, so I'm super excited to be here for that. And again, I'm just super honored. So I actually always had this fascination with media and the way that mostly female bodies, but I mean bodies in general, were represented in media. And that started from a young age. I think I was about 14 or 15 when I first started, I think, picking up on it. And part of it had to do with my own self-image and the way that I perceived myself and the relationship I had with myself, but also my love for photography, and everything that I was being taught was supposed to go on for the commercial and editorial industry was just something I don't support it. I don't engage with it. I don't think that retouching people's bodies or skin is something that we need to be doing. As a photographer, technically, I love playing with light. I love posing, and those things, I think, like, obviously we're going to use them. Everyone has different light, and if you want to do a professional photo shoot, you have professional lights to do so. So that's always going to be there, but I think the editing's just got to cool it. So I did my first project when I was just 16 years old, and it was this photo book. It's somewhere. I don't have it with me right now, but I have it somewhere. I could send you pictures of it later if you want to throw it in here. But I did that, and then I went to the Fashion Institute of Technology here in New York when I graduated high school, and I went there for a year, and I just felt like I wanted to do something more. But before I left, I created a documentary series with one of my close friends here in New York called I Feel Like a Supermodel, and essentially it's about deconstructing this idea of the perfect image in media. And here we are. Then I went to USC, focused on doing, just general education, getting my degree, doing all my classes, managing my chronic illness. And here we are. I fall into this trap of, one, being in Los Angeles, two, joining a social media club, and three, dealing with my chronic illness. So I had all of those things happen at the same time, really. And it honestly allowed me to kind of fall back into that body image work that I'd always been fascinated with. So I feel like it's super interesting that, I've been able to make a career out of it, but I guess according to my, 14, 15-year-old self, she had it all right.
That's really fascinating, because I mean, obviously, for us, it's in our community, it's about inclusion and diversity, and we work with, as a wheelchair basketball club, our sport is wheelchair basketball. Also, we do lots of different activities to support our community, and what I'm fascinated, obviously, because you're a very an advocate for mental health and chronic illness, and obviously yourself with your condition that you have. And we find it. I mean, I work in a college for working with students with complex disabilities in creative media, but also in access to college. So bringing students back in from not doing education for such a long time back into education, but supporting them through a role of trying to get them into that kind of their interests. Do you find it? I mean, where you started from, and what motivated you to really follow that career?
Yeah, there are a number of things. As I mentioned before, I joined a social media club called USC Reach, and it was founded in 2017 by some influencers, digital marketers, and people that were overall just really passionate about creating a community for people that wanted to use their voice on social media. I always knew that I wanted to do something with my photography, and that's why I joined the club, because I knew social media and photography go hand in hand if you want to make something blow up. Photojournalism is the exact same, except it used to be print media. Then it was all about the online magazines and media, which it still is, but I feel like less so in terms of the visual aspects of it. And now it's social media. So that's kind of why I decided to use social media as my platform and my basis for the mission that I do. And then I've mentioned this, pretty openly across my platforms, but I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder. It is considered a rare disorder, but I think because of more research, more people are getting diagnosed with it, which I'm happy to know that it's something that a lot of people deal with, because it makes me feel less alone. And on that note, that's why I started talking a lot about mental health struggles, because almost everybody has something that they're going through or dealing with, and that affects their mental health. And I just felt like talking about my own mental health made me feel less alone in my journey. And that's really, the premise of my work. I believe that creating conversations and having them about difficult things will lead to change. And that's really why I continue the work as an advocate. And I struggled so much in college. I really did. I struggled with friends. I struggled with managing my course load. I struggled with work, and I couldn't figure out this balance. And on top of that, I was working all of these jobs on social media as a freelancer. So I was creating content and producing things constantly on top of all of those previous things I just mentioned. So it was like this huge cluster of things that occupied my life, but I wasn't focusing on my health. And that was like the biggest problem now that I can see as, a year out of college and undergrad. So yeah, that's really why I started, and I'm committed to it.
Fantastic. I mean, thinking about obviously what you do on a regular basis, and do you find that it inspires other people as well about through social media, and especially with where we've been obviously last year, and still in circumstances we're still coming out of restrictions to the pandemic. Is it something that people need to reconnect with each other?
I think absolutely. I mean, if you just look at the way that personally, like I've made an impact in my communities, and I've grown like from 0 to 15K on IG and 0 to 135K on TikTok. Like, it reaches people that you don't even know about. And that's what really caused me, there's having so much going on externally that we cannot control. The one thing we can do is control ourselves and our own mental health, and really reconnecting with that. So that's what I focused on kind of the past year. And now I lecture students and universities about what's called social media literacy, which is this relationship between the way that we consume social media and the effects that it has on us physically and mentally. So, you said, does it affect people? Obviously it does. Let's say somebody posts a what I eat in a day video on TikTok. I don't know if you've seen one of those. And I think the intention behind it's good. If you are, for example, recovering from an eating disorder and you're like, this is what I've eaten in a day, because otherwise, like that's their accountability, and they may not eat otherwise. But to somebody else who's looking at them from an external perspective, not knowing their history or anything regarding, they may look at that and say, wow, I love how that person looks. Let me eat only what they're eating that day. And that develops disordered eating for other people. So that's an example, I think one of the prime examples of really social media literacy, like I guess, or the effects social media can have and why SML is so important. So that's what I educate on, and just kind of give people the tools to really understand their impact when they're creating content, and to not just create kind of like aimlessly.
I do find it quite interesting because obviously, working with students from the age of 16 to 24, and from autism, ADHD, mental health issues as well. The concept is they they don't watch broadcast TV. They don't watch, they don't read. But you come to
Right.
YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. That interests them quite a lot. So what you say is quite true, isn't it, really, regards to that affects their life on a daily basis?
Yeah, it 100% does. And I mean, you could look up the statistics, like look up 2020 rise in disordered eating or eating disorder development, rise in mental health disorders. I'm pretty sure that Gen Z and Gen Alpha, right? Are they calling the next generation Gen Alpha? That's what I heard, I think. They're saying that we're one of the most lonely and disconnected generations. And that's really because we're using this technology in a way that disconnects us from reality, I think. But if you can be aware of that and acknowledge it, and kind of don't let social media and technology use you, you as a person should use it. So social media is just a tool. And if we start viewing social media as a tool, it can become easier for us to kind of curate this narrative and this dialogue around mental health and body image. We can say, and fully disconnect and saying, I'm going on Instagram and I'm scrolling, and I know for a fact that a lot of people edit their photos, right? Versus going in and just saying, oh, wow, that girl is so pretty, and not even thinking about what they've done to manipulate that photo. So I don't know. I think that's kind of where we should head with social media, but it's going to take time, and I really think it's going to take some legislature. I really think also, if it's possible to get video editing and photo editing disclaimers on videos, that it's going to become a lot easier for people to really disconnect. And I know that they're capable of it 100%, because around election season and anything about the pandemic, there's a disclaimer. So it can auto sense it, even if it's just talking about the vaccine, right? I don't even have to be talking about the COVID vaccine, and it will pick that up. So I truthfully think, and I know that they're capable of adding those disclaimers. They just don't want to, because they profit off of us, and they profit off of us believing.
Okay. I mean, it is interesting because obviously, since, lots of countries went into lockdown, and, as I say, they're starting to come out now. The influence of being virtual has sort of took over the world, hasn't it? And, home learning for children, students, teaching. It's sort of, again, it's become a more virtual thing. But obviously, for some countries like ourselves, especially in deprived areas, it's been a struggle because of access of devices. I mean, do you think, obviously reconnecting virtually and supporting young people with accessibility to social media, and is that a positive thing?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I mean, it's inevitable that social media is going to be a part of our life, and technology is going to always be a part of our life, whether, back in the 1900s, just like 1 year ago, over 100 years ago, they were just figuring out cars, right? Like that's technology. And as more technology comes out, people have adapted. So if the future generation wants to do something about the way that we interact with and talk about our own mental health, I think we absolutely have to acknowledge the fact that a lot of it stems from our comparison to what we consume on social media. So a lot of it really has to do, honestly, within yourself. Like a lot of the work and a lot of the issues, to get through your mental health problems, like a lot of people go to doctors or therapists, right? They talk through their own problems to get better, to feel better, to function better. It's the same thing with a physical disability. You go to a doctor to get medicine or to get a physical therapist to do something to elevate the way that you function in society. So once we do that and we kind of focus on ourselves first, again, I think we're going to be able to use social media more as tools and less kind of as this like media outlet that's brainwashing us and feeding us all of this external information all the time. And it's so hard. I couldn't imagine being a kid and like, I grew up always wanting to watch TV. That was our thing. TV, TV, TV. The kids now are like tablet, iPad, TV, and they'll just go and they'll scroll and scroll and scroll. And it's like they're taught how to scroll from the time that they're 2 years old because that's what we give them to learn. And I think it's just, I don't know the answer. I don't have a child myself, so I'm not a parent. I don't really know the direct effect on like, infants with social media, but I've seen family friends and I've seen my little cousins really develop their personalities on and around social media too. And I mean, I think it's great in a lot of ways and it's helping people build their confidence, but at the same time, it's also making people super insecure and really having these issues with their own mental health. So I think it's an open-ended question. It's still being sought out since social media is so new. And I think we're only going to learn more and more down the line.
Fantastic. I mean, I think obviously, we talk about, how things have changed over the last 12 months or more. And, you think about inclusion and diversity. Why is inclusion and diversity so important now?
Why is it important now? Well, I mean, I think, since a very long time, I mean, I don't know too much about the way that I don't know. Actually, I think it's so important now because on social media, like anyone can have a platform, but it's really, I don't want to say it's a trend right now, but I think because so many younger people are involved with social media and it's such a big part of their life that they want to stand for something and they want to be a part of a brand or a movement that also stands for the same thing. So on that note, when you're becoming an advocate or you're speaking out or you're doing some kind of activism, make sure it's intentional. And with that, make sure that you're including a bunch of different perspectives. I have been a mental health and chronic illness and disability advocate for a little over 2 years now, and I'm still learning. I really need to work up on adding the alternative text and the image descriptions in my photos. And I fully acknowledge that, but that's because I need to make my content the most accessible possible. So I think as including different perspectives and different kind of accessibility resources in our content that we consume on social media becomes the more holistic and the more holistic using social media will become. So that's something. And then I mean, in media, I always will be an advocate for this. No retouching. Let's see stretch marks. Let's see cellulite. Let's see wrinkles. Like, I look at the cover of People magazine and I'm like, this person looks like they have a baby's face with literally no wrinkles. Like, how can we equate this to be the standard of beauty when the only way that you can do that is through an artificial editing software? Like, that's not inclusion. That's like literally saying this is unattainable and nobody can look like this. Not even celebrities once they've done the diets or gotten the Botox and gotten the surgery. Like, it's crazy. So I think just being more transparent also, and like, I personally also believe that companies taking a stand, not performatively, like, I want to see companies that genuinely care about making an impact and that are genuinely committed to it. I don't want to just see them post a rainbow shirt for Pride Month. I want to see them advocating for LGBTQ rights all year round. I want to see them have people on their advisory boards and in their, company structure. I want to see people of all different backgrounds.
It's interesting you to say that, because I mean, obviously, we first started this with Samantha Bullock, who's part of SB Inclusion. She's a wheelchair fashion model from Brazil, and obviously lives in the UK as well, but travels the world as a wheelchair model. And it's it's interesting because obviously Samantha herself actually produced a challenge for people with disabilities, but also different sizes, different genders, to fashion themselves through Vogue and different fashion covers. And it was different because obviously it made people take notice of inclusion fashion for a change. So yeah, I think you're right, and I think it's really interesting that you say that people need to be aware now that it doesn't matter who you are and what defines you. You should have the ability to show what you're capable of and who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, it's also like if you're not speaking out against it, which is fine, like there are people I know that um they use social media exclusively as a means to just post things for their close friends and family to see. And I totally understand that. But those people, a lot of the times, are also the ones kind of like consuming. And if they're consuming content that's, just about fashion styles or things that, sorry for the sirens, I'm in New York City. If they're consuming things that are just about fashion trends, and there's somebody who maybe is not like the most fashionable, it's going to make them ultimately feel a little bit insecure about the way that they dress, therefore affecting their self-worth and mental health. So on that note, I think it's just so important to follow brands that do the same thing. Like, I don't want to follow a brand that's not representing disabled people in their marketing. I want to see the way a swimsuit looks on a disabled body that might be similar to my own. Those kinds of things are important to me personally as an artist, as a consumer, and just I think as like a good human being.
I mean, it is. I mean, we obviously, thinking of that, and obviously discrimination and what employers need to do. Do you think employers need to do more, not only just in countries but globally as well?
Absolutely. I think there can be a lot more. And I mean, I've had a lot of conversations about kind of shame around disability. And part of that is because of my experience in undergrad and my experience in middle school. When I was on crutches, I had a teacher who called me gimpy. Like, that's not cool. Like, why was she calling this little 13-year-old girl with crutches and a cast gimpy for the way that she looked? Like, what? That's just not okay. And it fundamentally comes down to changing the way that we view disability in institutions, because most people are part of institutions, like to make their money. So, or to get their education. And there needs to be a lot of reform, I think, and education within schooling systems. Like, from young ages, we need to understand that there's going to be people that look different than us. There's going to be people that have different accommodation needs and different ability, simply put. And in college, I was challenged. I had professors tell me, like, you look fine. I'm like, I look fine, but I'm not. That doesn't have anything, like, you look fine, like, but you're pretty stupid. So, like, shut your mouth, Like, one of my best friends, she says, like, whenever somebody says, oh, you look fine, she's like, well, yeah, you didn't look stupid until you opened your mouth. It's like, it's just people don't have an understanding, I think, of what it means to really, really, truly be inclusive, and to make sure that they're hiring and making things available, or making accommodations available without any reason if
Yeah.
somebody needs it.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite interesting because obviously for young adults in this country, and going through college, the statistic rates for employment is less than 15% for autism and Asperger's and ADHD. Disability wise, there's it's really disturbing to see that statistics are quite lower compared to the availability for people that are getting jobs with who are able-bodied, and in some cases, through the pandemic, and I hate to say, but disability has been classed as second-class citizens. For example, the being going into hospital with COVID, they were told that they weren't going to be resuscitated because obviously they were too much of a risk to do that because of the COVID-19. So it is quite scary, and to believe that in this time and day and age that this is still happening with this kind of stigma and kind of discrimination.
Yeah, and it's super interesting also because like people that are disabled have been asking for all of these accommodations to work from home, and if they have a sick day to be able to just log in on Zoom, and to just, I mean, working remotely is huge for somebody who has a hard time getting out of bed and functioning. If I can do all my work from my bed, what does that matter? I can tune into a Zoom meeting. So I'm more scared and more interested in what's going to happen in the next 6 months to 2 years really of the workplace dynamic, because I feel like the second able-bodied people couldn't go in because of the pandemic that was deadly and would put a lot of other people at risk, they shut the world down and they said, okay, here's all of these accommodations, here's budgets for at-home work, here's laptops, here's free Zoom accounts, and this and that. And disabled people have been asking for this for so long. And these companies just all of a sudden are like, yeah, we'll do it for a majority of you, but by the way, disabled people, like, keep going, you're doing so great remotely. Like, that's what makes me pretty frustrated, is the fact that like institutions and corporations are just so willing to do anything to keep all of their able-bodied people happy and functioning in society when they like have just been ignoring disabled voices. So I really, and this goes also in terms of diversity and inclusion, like you said before, including different marginalized communities, and their voices and their perspectives of how they're treated. Like, aside from disability, that's also super important to acknowledge, because a lot of times corporations are 75% white, and like their diversity is so low, and as a result it creates bias for other people, and that's not right.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to a few people in different interviews, and coming off like the basis of like we've the diversity problems, inclusion, but also in some cases it comes down to class as well. Where you're from or your background, depending where you grew up, it can actually have effect where you get to, if you get to the top of the ladder or not, because you don't fit in.
Right.
It's quite interesting.
Yeah, what were you saying? Sorry.
That's all right. Moving on, obviously, talking about how you started, what would your advice be to young children or young students who want to follow that career path into photography or social media and be kind of an influencer themselves?
Well, my biggest thing, and you'll hear me say this across interviews and across platforms, is just start. Everyone starts somewhere. When I started Instagram when I was 12 years old, when it came out in 2008, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know how to really use the app. I just kind of got on it and started posting my photos. Your voice comes over time, and really just, I think, setting those boundaries with the app. And like, I think because social media is so accessible and you can really create a career early on with it, to not burn yourself out. Like, you still have to live your childhood and enjoy it. And if you enjoy creating short form videos or doing photography, like, totally continue to do that, but also do it outside of the scope of social media, because I think that's where a lot of people get lost nowadays. They're so focused on, I want to be an influencer, I want to be famous, I want to have, you know, 1 million followers. But the question is why? Like, why are you doing this? What is really important to you? Is it because you have self-worth problems and having a lot of followers makes you feel better? Because that's only temporary. Those numbers are only temporary. Again, all the work that you need to do is like really on yourself. It comes from within. And I'm not sure if you did a deep dive, but I actually have a talk show called Everything You Need Is Within, which is streamed on Instagram and will be a podcast. So it is more accessible in just a month or so. So keep a lookout for that. But again, the title is Everything You Need Is Within. I fundamentally believe in this, and I put this first. Whatever challenge I'm getting through, I know I can look inside, and if I am having a hard time figuring it out on my own, I either ask friends if it's okay to vent, or ask them for advice, or I talk to my therapist about it. And I'm very, very open about this because people think it's so hard to get help. And with social media, you've got not only your opinions of what you're sharing online, but you also have everyone else's opinions coming at you all the time, not only in response to your content, but with what you consume. So I just, I think to anybody who's young and starting out with this, like, practice really helps, and doing it outside. I spent years doing photography before I even posted it on Instagram. I also spent years of learning how to public speak in private and in university before I started doing it professionally. It's not to say you can't start young, of course you can. But just remember that if you're doing it as a career, a lot of people's careers begin around 17 or 18 when they get into college and they start to go to internships. So don't get ahead of yourself, because success does not always happen overnight.
Fantastic. I mean, thinking about your photography and you know your social media, what's your most fondest achievement or photograph or social media?
Oh man, this is a hard question because honestly, I've done quite a lot. I actually used to be, I used to enter so many competitions for photography, and a lot of my work was in galleries all over the world. But I would say my biggest achievement was probably being in the Metropolitan Museum of Art 4 different times through competitions in their education center. And I feel like not a lot of people can say that their work's been in the Met. And I mean, it's the freaking Metropolitan Museum of Art. Like, what? It's crazy to me. And yeah, I mean, now I really do think like being a patient advocate and a leader in this space, and being able to have conversations with people like you around the world now. I think that's another achievement that I'm just so
Thank
proud of.
you. That's very kind. I mean, we've got two more questions before we finish, and obviously we talk about motivation and inspiration. What would your message be regarding motivation and inspiration to key workers who obviously been at the front line since this thing, you know, this started, and
Yeah.
people are still struggling at home? What would you say to them now, and you know, how would you support them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I would say thank you to any healthcare workers or frontline workers that have worked throughout the pandemic. My mom's actually a nurse, so she was working throughout this whole thing the whole time. And even that was really nerve-wracking because we never knew. She was on a COVID-free unit, but that's the thing with it. You never know when somebody could just arrive and have it and infect the whole unit. So it was definitely pretty nerve-wracking. And I have experienced firsthand what it's like to live at home with somebody who's exposed to this every single day. So it's definitely scary. And I would say to just kind of like acknowledge those feelings and really like sit with them sometimes. I know it can be scary. Something I do that also, this sounds kind of funny, but hopefully if you can find a couple minutes of your day to like go outside or look outside your window and just kind of look and listen to what's going on and kind of ground yourself and like, okay, I'm here in New York City. I can see the George Washington Bridge. I can see the Cloisters Museum. I can hear some airplanes going by. Like all of these little things kind of ground me and make me focus on what I'm doing here in the present moment and not all of those terrible, crazy things that's going around on around me. And I've been working on that, and in correlation with that, manifestation and like mindset and breath work all goes into that. So I go on walks with my dog, and that's where we do our look and listen. But to anybody else who does have a really grueling job or is on the front line, at the very least, try to find a place where you can take that mask off safely away from people and just breathe and ground yourself.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because obviously, we're hoping by June the 21st to obviously come out of. I mean, we're virtually now. By that time, we should be back to kind of a kind of normality. But obviously, they're hoping to get rid of social distance. But obviously, it all depends on the Indian variant, and it's interesting because again, it's down to that lack of clarity by government sources. So yes, we are sort of back to kind of some normality, but obviously again, it's that clarity, but also people are still scared, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, living with a chronic illness that puts me at risk is definitely scary because I was able to get the vaccine here in New York City. I know people are still getting them all around the country and around the world. And I know it's quite the controversy here, but I don't want to go into that right now. But overall, according to the CDC, which I'm going to trust them, they say if you're vaccinated, like you're pretty okay. I still am very nervous because I can't control the people around me or external factors. I can only control me. So for the most part, if there's people anywhere near me, I'm wearing a mask. If there's not, and I'm outside and I'm at least 6 feet, or if I have a 6 feet bubble, I'm not wearing my mask. And that's just how I personally feel about it. But going into public places, I still will wear a mask, and I think I'll probably wear it a lot in the near future, and it's just going to become a norm for me. And I know I'm keeping myself safe. I'm also keeping my parents safe. I live at home and I live with them, and I don't want to do anything that endangers them. And I think it's just a respect thing. Like if somebody is not down to hang out with you or gives you problems for wearing your mask, like how insensitive of a person. Like it's your choice to wear a mask to keep yourself safe. That's up to you, and that's totally okay. And on another note, whether you're a young person listening to this, whether you're a frontline worker, whether you're somebody with disability, whether you're just anybody, honestly, make sure that you work on setting your boundaries here. Because if you don't, like, you'll let people walk all over you. And because somebody said, or even if it's your friend, they're like, hey, like, yeah, we're vaccinated, it's fine, let's go out to eat. And then the person sitting at the next table does a sneeze, they have COVID, then it goes through the air or whatever and gets to you somehow, like because your friend convinced you to go out, kind of as like a peer pressure thing. It's similar to drinking, oh yeah, just have a drink, have a shot, have a cigarette, smoke, like those kinds of things. I feel like not wearing your mask has become kind of this like similar thing. So just make sure you set your boundary and you say, I'm really okay. I just need to do this to feel comfortable for my mental health and for my physical health. And this is my decision. I love you. Thank you for your input, but I will be wearing my mask. And that's what I think about the whole COVID situation.
Thank you. And finally, our last question is, if you could think of a quote to support motivation and inspiration, what would that quote be and why?
Well, I certainly would have to say everything you need is within, first and foremost. That's one of my mantras. My dad always used to say, all you need is within you now to me, which is very similar. But my rendition of that has just become everything you need is within. And, I know any day that I'm struggling, like if I could get through one of my worst days, I'll be able to, get through anything. And that really goes exclusively through myself. And another one for any people creating content out there, this is another powerful creative mantra that I made up. And I say, I create with intention, deliver with confidence, and radiate positivity.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Before you go, obviously we support Sophia Warner superhero series, and we're actually sponsored by Marvel. So at the moment we're actually gearing up for a new event next week, which starts May the 29th for Marvel hashtag Find Your Power, and it's an inclusion participation event which now covers 3,000 people across the globe. So what we've asked, if all our interviewees could actually do a quick message to all our superheroes from our schools, our colleges, all the people that take part. So could you very kindly give a message to everybody taking part over the globe at this moment for the superhero series Marvel hashtag Find Your Power?
Yes. Well, hi everyone. My name is Gigi Robinson. Thank you so much for participating in the Marvel Find Your Superpower Challenge. It means the world to us and to me, and I'm here to support you. You guys are awesome. Mwah.
Thank you, Judy. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm glad I'm your first international interview. It really has been an honour to speak to you and listen to about social media and everything else that you do. And please continue to carry on. I look forward to seeing your continuation on TikTok and everywhere else. Gigi Robinson, thank you. Take care. Stay safe, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
I had a quick question.
Go on then.
I know it's still recording. I know we're like done. I would love to participate in this Marvel challenge. That sounds like so much fun. Send me the information to it. And
I will do. I'll send you the link, and you can have a look.
Yeah.
If you email me your address, I'll send you over a T-shirt and a medal.
Oh, how cool. Yeah, I love that. My family's gonna freak out because if I'm like, hey, I'm doing a campaign with Marvel, they're gonna literally shit themselves. So I don't want to curse on any of this, but
Well, the funny thing is, it's we started back with Sophia Warner, who's a GB Paralympian. And she founded the superhero series, and basically what it is in Windsor in Lake Dorney for the last 4 or 5 years, it's been down there doing a superhero try with inclusion participation with young people and their families, and anybody who reads come along, able-bodied or disability, working together. They can do it solo or in teams.
Right.
They can do any activity to run, walk, push in their chair, up and down their stairs, in their living room, in their garden. And obviously, because of the pandemic, it's changed to called At-Home Superheroes. And it was such a great event last year. I think we covered over 2,000 kilometres, just our team alone. The one that's coming out that starts next week is Marvel hashtag Find Your Power. Marvel actually got in touch with Sophia Warner, asked if they could sponsor it. They gave us all these T-shirts for free. We said yes, and the idea is to do 10,000 kilometers from London Marvel headquarters to New York Marvel headquarters, Avengers headquarters, and back again. As a team, you can do 10,000 kilometers together, and it continues all the way through the year. So this week is a mini one. It starts again in August with At-Home Superheroes, and then in winter it's At-Home Winter Wonder Wheels. And it's continuous, and it's an inclusion participation event that everybody dresses up in superhero costumes. So I'm usually Spider-Man, believe it or not, but this year I'm part of Captain Marvel's superhero team. So and they use celebrities who take part as well, so it's really interesting. So yeah, you're more than happy. So please send me your details, and I'll send you over a mark.
Absolutely. And let me know. I mean, if there's a team here in New York that you can connect me to, whether that's the Marvel team, I don't know how close you guys are with them, or if that's the organizers, I would seriously love to give back and participate and also amplify once this is live. I'll reshare this and I'll certainly take part as, you know, maybe I'll post both together so that people can hear both. But
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll contact Sophia Warner and
yeah,
I'll let her get in touch with you, and hopefully we can sort something out for you. That'd be great.
amazing. Yeah, and I'll have I'll let you know because a lot of the things that I do I run by my publicist, and she has a lot of connections who I'm sure would highlight this because I don't see too, I mean, maybe there will be more once it launches, but if I can get this out there more for, you know, your guys' sake, I would absolutely love to. So I'm gonna send over everything to you. Don't forget to send me everything. This was so nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Gigi. You take care.
Bye.